Base building is one of those things that I love seeing in tabletop role-playing games. Which is a shame, since the big name in the game atrophied that part of it as it went on through editions. So when I find a tabletop role-playing game that features base building or otherwise large-scale operations, especially when they're side-by-side individual scale actions, it piques my curiosity. So when a friend pitched Legacy Life Among the Ruins to me, a game set in the post-apocalypse complete with base building, well, how could I not take her up on her offer? So today, we're going to talk about Legacy Life Among the Ruins, a powered by the apocalypse game set after the apocalypse. As I mentioned in the opening, this is a powered by the apocalypse game. Though if you're somehow unfamiliar with games based on this system, Powered by the Apocalypse is a system that many games use where character creation is very streamlined, the rules are very lightweight, and the story aspect is often more important than any specific rules. In other words, the perfect sort of game for people not too concerned with learning a bunch of rules, while also being utterly loathed by munchkins and power gamers. The hallmarks of a Powered by the Apocalypse game tend to be that characters are defined by their playbook, a list of special abilities they have that are generally a little bit better in some way than what a person could ordinarily do. An ordinary person's abilities being defined as a list of general moves that everyone has access to. Sometimes there's a little bit of ambiguity in terms of how some abilities interact, and other times there's not much reason behind why something would work short of the rules say so. In these cases, the best way to resolve these conflicts is, what makes for the most interesting story? So if a move in somebody's playbook says that something they're protecting will never come to harm, then that's the direction the story is headed in. You come up with a reason that makes for a compelling story to explain why it never comes to harm. Another common feature of Powered by the Apocalypse is the idea of fail forward, where just because something bad happens to a character doesn't mean that you're being punished and having things taken from you because of a crappy die roll. Mileage varies from game to game. Some are better at expressing these ideas. Others are just paint by numbers. Hey, look, I'm a game designer now. Trash heaps. Legacy Life Among the Ruins does not fall into that latter camp. Otherwise, I would simply pass it by. And with that said, let's take a look at what makes this stand out in general. Character creation in Legacy is standard Powered by the Apocalypse fare. You pick a playbook, make a few choices that change depending on which playbook you have, and those choices will affect your character's stats and special abilities. What sets Legacy apart, however, is this. You will be picking two playbooks. One for your standard character, of course, but before that, you pick one for their family. Family in Legacy Life Among the Ruins refers less to your character's biological relations, and more to the group of people that they associate with. And they have their own stats, special moves, and most interesting, some of the choices that your family is posed with will affect the very setting of the game world. Take the Gilded Hall of Merchants family, for example. Your choices of stats also answer what the apocalypse was like. Picking that the fall was so long ago that few can remember how it played out gives you the stats of Reach 0, Grasp 1, and Sleight 0. You also pick out 3 landmarks to add to the world map, with your family giving suggestions for what might make sense given your presence. Consider the fall section for merchants, a transport line, a business district, or a cache of doomsday weapons that never got used. You're welcome to deviate from this if you have a different idea, but all the listings follow a certain theme. So right off the bat, we have not one, but 2 things I love seeing in a game. Mechanics for a group greater than an individual character, and collaborative world building. Because remember, every family makes 3 marks on the map and contributes 1 piece of the puzzle to what led to where things stand now. Meaning you, as the GM, are here to make sense of the world as the players pick and choose, and to mediate actions taken, not to dictate a story to the players that they get to have a character that bears witness to. Players pick the pieces, GM sets them up and moves them. My favorite way of GMing. One of the things that really drives the story in Legacy is family needs and surpluses. Things that the family has, as the names imply, a desperate need for, and way more than they know what to do with. By default, families have a list of 5 such resources, and you pick 2 to be surpluses and the rest are needs. And if you look close enough, this choice also tells a story. Let's look at the merchant's starting resources: barter goods, artisans, recruits, medicine, and prestige. If you pick barter goods and prestige, it means you've got a lot to trade with and you are very well known for this. But you have trouble making more complicated things and you don't have a lot of personnel. Presumably because they're all sick and you need medicine. Another thing worth noting, your character's family also impacts some of the choices for your character. Specifically, their default equipment is the same as that from their family, and the family surpluses influences what extra equipment you can get. Continuing with using merchants as an example, merchants always have clothing with well-fitting and stylish tags. This doesn't do much on its own, but you never know when it could be important that your clothes aren't baggy and sagging and also look nice. And there's a list of 3 other things we can pick with some suggested tags, such as having heirloom masterwork weapons, represented by being elegant melee weapons. They are very nice looking and probably go well with our stylish clothes, but we have to actually get up close and personal to fight with them. As well as all-weather travel gear, having the utility and thermo tags, meaning we can handle any environment and they're basically our work clothes that we change into. And it never hurts to have bodyguards, quality 1 followers good at guarding and protecting. Which would mean we would need to forgo having a means of travel, but maybe we picked some other features that made that less pressing of an issue. Or it's the very thing we need to find to continue our operations. Legacy's mechanics are simple. Most rolls are 2d6 modified by a relevant stat. 6 or below, something always goes wrong as a result of your actions. 7 to 9 usually means that you succeeded, but either not as well as you would have liked or there's some drawback or cost. And 10 is almost always a complete success. And these rolls work the same way for both characters and families, even though the 2 have different stats. Families have 3 stats: reach, which is influencing other groups; grasp, which is maintaining physical control over an area; and sleight, which is making moves without being noticed. Characters have 4 stats: force, which is their might and physical strength; sway, which is their ability to convince other people of things; steel, which is surviving and having your wits about you; and lore, which is knowing things. Additionally, certain rolls may have advantage or disadvantage. On advantage, you roll 3 dice and take the highest 2. Disadvantage, you roll 3 dice and take the lowest 2. Consider the move Familiar Face, which lets you determine if you know somebody when you move into a new area. You roll your character's sway, and on a 6, you don't. But on a 7, you get to pick 2 options from a list of various positive outcomes. And if you rolled a 10, you pick 3 options from that list, which is nothing to sneeze at since that list includes 4 possibilities. And anything else relevant to Familiar Face? Well, that's up to the GM. But if there's no specific write-up for a certain action, it mostly comes down to GM fiat, meaning whether or not it happens is up to the GM. And GMs, if it makes sense that a given action could occur, allow it. Let's say a character belongs to a family with a surplus of medicine. They could easily stave off an infection as they go through a place racked with a plague. In fact, that player could even say that their family is willing to expend their medicine surplus to rid the world of that plague. No rules needed, just remove the medicine surplus and come up with some consequences for the matter. Most obviously, the family treating the plague is going to get a point of treaty on any non-player families that are affected by it. Treaty is another resource that represents how one family can manipulate another, such as by forcing them to give resources or otherwise help in some way. Every family typically has an ability that generates treaty on other families. Going once again back to my favorite, the merchants. Whenever you make another group a part of your trading operation, gain 1 treaty on them. By contrast, let's consider the lawgivers of the wasteland. If the lawgivers take out another family's enemy, they gain 2 treaty on that family. Legacy: Life Among the Ruins is a game where death is not necessarily the end. Well, it'll be the end for that character that died, but there's an entire group that'll still be there to carry on the story. Every character also has one final move they do upon dying, aptly named their death move. Scavenger, for example, leaves behind a map that leads to their treasure stash, giving your next character a goal beyond finishing their predecessor's unfinished business, finding a cache of tech, weapons, food, and water. Legacy is also a game that lives up to its name. It's a story that's right and truly about more than just a handful of people. And one way it presents this is through the age turns. You roll based on your family's mood, which is the difference between their surpluses and their needs. And one way or another, two things will happen, with the results determining whether those will be a fortune or a trial. And the names do make it sound bad if you get a trial, which is definitely the case. It's a bad thing that happened to your family in the time that passed. But the mechanical effects of the trial can still be beneficial. One such example is the result where your family somehow suffers violence. They learn from the experience, giving them a new move from their family playbook, but they then have to take the need for justice. Conversely, not every fortune is completely good. There's one result where your family goes to war, and they become much stronger for the effort, gaining grasp and a surplus of weapons. But the group that they waged war with is not happy about this, and until that group has been dealt with, your family will always be at disadvantage on any roll made against them. Plus, when an age changes, you make a new character. Or if you continue to play as your current character, you pick a new playbook for them to represent how time changed them. And last, I want to talk about wonders. These are the things that change the landscape of the game entirely. They are not a trivial matter. And this is reflected by the fact that they require a lot of resources. Completing one also ushers in a new age, with its own list of trials and fortunes based on the wonder created. Though the most important thing to note is that it should ultimately make sense when a wonder is built. Just because you have the resources doesn't mean you can go ahead and make a wonder. If everybody is at peace and there's no tensions between any major groups, why would total war happen? And why would everybody suddenly decide they want to blast everyone back into the Stone Age? Or, if everybody in this post-apocalypse is dumber than a box of rocks, there needs to be a really good reason for them to use the Great Network, an intellectual renaissance. While it may have sounded like I had some disdain for Powered by the Apocalypse at the start of this video, the reality is this. That tag only tells me what I can expect character creation to be like. Much like seeing 5e compatible Tri-Stat or D20 system on a book. The devil is in the details, and the detail that the devil demands is what else does the game offer. And Legacy: Life Among the Ruins does not disappoint with what it adds to the mix. It uses Powered by the Apocalypse's narrative focus to work around how there's no real standard for what the end looks like, much less what life is like afterwards. By rules as written, what the end was like is something everybody gets to contribute to, and every player has input into what the new world now looks like. Which also does away with another thing I dislike about many tabletop role-playing games. That there must be a world already written about that the game is assumed to take place in. Some folks might like that and enjoy reading about such worlds as part of the RPGs they play, but I'm not one of those people. From a logistics perspective, that is yet another thing that I, as the GM, will likely have to teach new potential players, or otherwise expect them to care about in the first place. I digress, though. Legacy is worth getting for many reasons, among them being that it's a good example of how to add to the formula of Powered by the Apocalypse. It's simple, but the family scale actions and resources make for effective base building mechanics, and narratively, it gives players ample buy-in. If there's any drawback to this game, it's that it lacks complexity, but simplicity isn't necessarily a bad thing. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting or helpful, give me a thumbs up like. And if you want to learn more about other unusual tabletop role-playing games, consider looking at my other videos, or subscribing. And remember, one person's videos on the internet are not a replacement for reading the rulebook yourself, as there is a lot of details I skimmed over in the making of this video. So, with all that said, I am Aaron Der Schädel, and I will see you all next time.